Good morning. I'm Sue Hodgen. It is 10 o'clock and I'm calling to order this special call meeting of the South Porch Planning Board. We ask that everyone please silence or turn off your cell phones. As always, we'll rise, everybody that can. Will, if you'll do an invocation for us, and we'll follow with our lead.
Our Father in heaven, we come before you this day, this beautiful day in Southport. We give thee thanks for all that thou hast given us, this beautiful town, this beautiful day, and the opportunity we have to come together. And we ask a blessing upon members of this board and community today that we can find a pathway that will be pleasing unto thee. We are so very grateful for all that gives us. And then when we leave, we ask that we can travel in safety to our many destinations and continue on. And again, we thank thee for all that thou gives us in the name of thy son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We welcome everyone in attendance. The meeting has been noticed and is open for public attendance today. The single purpose for today's meeting is our continuing discussion and review for our recommendation regarding the best use of Brunswick County's first courthouse here in Southport. Any findings here will be considered for inclusion in the board's final recommendation to the Board of Aldermen due April 3rd. Members were issued this morning's agenda before the start of the meeting. Are there any additions or corrections? Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Will and Larry. There is motion on the floor. Any final discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen. Public comment is recognized and encouraged at each regular meeting of the planning board. This meeting was categorized as a work session where normally, like the aldermen when they're working on the city budget, for instance, public comment is not accepted. But staff included public comment on the agenda, so we will honor that for this meeting. Do I hear a motion that we go into public comment?
So moved.
In second.
Thank you so much. Gentlemen, motion is on the floor. Any final discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. I will note that we're aware of the solicitations, by an admin on a Facebook group page, and I think Chief Corn was involved in that as well, asking for letters of support to be submitted for the chief and his preferred plans for the courthouse. Madam Deputy Clerk, I understand we have several email comments, 13, I believe. Please begin calling those names and reading those comments. You have water with you?
Have coffee.
Go ahead.
The first one is from Charles and Joanne Weston. Just want to say our neighbors totally support the police department using the building. The arts can locate elsewhere. Our police deserve to have a downtown location to expand and free from other businesses. Charles. I have Charles Franca. Dear City Clerk, I am writing to formally request that the City of Southport consider reoccupying the old courthouse located downtown with the police department. Currently, the old courthouse stands vacant. Reestablishing a police presence in the central location would offer numerous benefits to our community, including increased visibility and deterrence. A police presence downtown would enhance visibility, acting as a deterrent to crime and improving public safety. Faster response times. A downtown location would facilitate quicker responses to incidents in the central business district and surrounding residential areas. Enhanced community engagement. A police presence in the old courthouse would provide a readily accessible point of contact for residents and businesses to interact with law enforcement. revitalization of downtown. Reoccupying the old courthouse could contribute to the revitalization, of downtown, fostering a sense of security and encouraging economic activity. Optimal use of city-owned property. It would allow the city to make optimal use of an existing city-owned property. I understand that reoccupying the old courthouse would require planning and resources. However, I believe that the potential benefits to our community far outweigh that challenge. I urge you to bring this request to the attention of the city council for consideration. I would appreciate the opportunity to discuss this matter further and provide any additional information needed. Thank you for your time and attention to this important issue. Sincerely, Charles Franca, 305B Stewart Avenue, Southport. Francesca and Max Slaughter. Dear Aldermen and Planning Board members, I urge you to support relocating our police department back to the old courthouse. For 5 years, our police chief has advocated for more space, and after extensive assessment by the city manager, city engineers, and an architect firm, it has been confirmed that the 8,500 square feet of available space in the old courthouse meets the department's long-term needs. The Board of Aldermen has already voted for the city to occupy the building, followed by a motion allowing the police department to move in, pending planning board review and a final vote in April. This move is both financially and practically sound, ensuring our police remain in a central, accessibly downtown location. I encourage you to approve this location for the benefit of our tax-paying citizens and our entire community and officers. Sincerely, Francesca and Matt Slaughter, 6272 Catskill Court, Southport, North Carolina, 28461. Gary Lindenmuth, please read as planning board and board of aldermen public comments. I support the Southport Police Department's plan to occupy Old City Hall. Gary B. Lindenmuth, 603 Longleaf Drive, Southport, North Carolina. Jay Beard, Mr. Benny, as a resident of Southport, I support Chief Coring's vision to permanently relocate to the Southport Police Department to the Old City Hall. Please include my support when the issue is being discussed by the Planning Board and the Board of Aldermen. Respectively, Jay Beard, 830 North Ward Street, Southport, North Carolina. Jean Potter, I support the police department's plan to occupy the old city hall. Jean B. Potter, 315 Burlington Avenue. Aaron Fisher, we would like to see the police department back where it belongs in the city, in the old city hall. Paul and Karen Fisher. Catherine Huffam, it is really sad that some of our powers to be in Southport, Board of Aldermen and Planning Board, would even question where the Southport Police Department should be located. And even sadder, they don't listen to their chief of police. They are totally disrespectful of Todd Coring as the chief and his knowledge of what his department needs are and where the police department needs to be located. And even worse, they don't seem to have any respect for Southport's history and the old courthouse was a government building from its beginning, and it should be kept as one going forward. They need to take lessons from Dozier Memorial Hospital and St. Philip's Episcopal Church. Both have been in the same place as when they were built, and when they needed to grow, they purchased adjacent land when it became available in order to do so. Catherine Huffam, Southport. Lindsay Williamson. I support the Southport Police Department's plan to occupy the old city hall. I support Chief Coring and his thoughts and wishes to use the old city hall for the Southport Police Department. This is the best decision and makes sense. Lindsay Williamson, 319 Stewart Avenue, city resident. Thank you for your time. Paul Rose. My name is Paul Rose. I live at 1018 North Castle Avenue in Southport. My comments do not speak for my prior employers, the state of North Carolina, Wake County Human Services, or the city of Southport. I've worked for local and state government here in North Carolina for approximately 40 years. The majority of my career has been in financial management, including the responsibility for space planning and oversight of over 270 leases statewide with the North Carolina Department of Corrections, Division of Adult Probation and Parole under Governor Easley. The proposed relocation of the Southport Police Department to Old City Hall is a cost-effective solution that meets the needs of our law enforcement, both short and long term. Our police department doesn't need all the bells and whistles of a big city police department. Those on the board of aldermen who oppose this move for our police only use the available space capacity as an excuse to give our historic treasure, Old City Hall, to an arts group. Their priorities are frankly misguided, to put it mildly. I'm holding my tongue on that sentence. The architects and Chief Boring have done an excellent job answering questions and justifying their proposal. A $4 million renovation of Old City Hall is much more preferred by Southport taxpayers than a $14 million new structure for our police department. The city has plenty of privately owned art galleries and music venues. Taxpayers' assets like historic City Hall should not be given to another non-government organization. It seems that the same board members who opposed the proposals voted for a 34% city tax increase in fiscal year 23, once again, are not putting Southport taxpayers first. I ask you to approve Old City Hall for the use by our police department and board of aldermen. Put Southport city government first. Sincerely, Paul Gross, 1018 North Caswell, Southport. I might need the floor. Rachel likes it. In my opinion, I think and feel the police department should be back into Old City Hall in downtown Southport. Why waste taxpayers' dollars leasing a building when the city owns one? This makes absolutely no sense at all. Not to mention the traffic issue where the police department is now. Traffic is always backed up to that intersection. There's a major event, the officers would not be able to respond in a timely manner. Thank you for the opportunity to voice my opinion, and you may read this at the special planning board meeting. Sincerely, Rachel W. Lysett, Park Avenue, Southport. Shirley Sullivan. Please read at both the planning board and board of aldermen public comments at their next meetings. I support the Southport Police Department's plan to occupy Old City Hall. It is by far the best use of the Old City Hall. Sincerely, Shirley Sullivan, 5002 Seaward Court, Southport, North Carolina. Wendy Lawson. I'm sending this email because I cannot attend a meeting to discuss the following Southport Police Department to be housed in the old courthouse on Moore Street. I have lived in Southport for almost 10 years. I loved that our little town had a Mayberry type feel when the police department was on Moore Street. Well, Southport grew, so our police department had to grow with it. So they moved to the city office. They outgrew that space as well. It doesn't make a lot of sense that our police department now isn't even within the technical city limits at this point. The city is having to pay for another office space when the courthouse has sat empty for years. I live in town and walk all around it all the time. The shopping and restaurant sections do not cover much mileage. We're in 2025. Most people have GPS on their phones. The city could definitely use whatever money they are trying to spend on unsightly kiosks around town on renovating the courthouse. There has to be money allotted for something that isn't necessary as this time to accommodate the men and women who keep Southport safe. Thank you for listening. Wendy Lawson, 205 East 8th Street, Southport, North Carolina. I'm done.
Thank you. Is there anyone present, whether you signed up or not, that wants to address the board? Please do.
My name is Bonnie Gray. I live at
Bonnie, you
515
press the button on that. Perfect, thank you.
Freeland.
Yeah.
Bonnie Gray, 515 Quartermaster Drive in Southport. I wasn't going to speak today, but I do feel compelled to correct the opinion of at least two of the public comment contributors. The arts have moved on. The arts group, the Center for the Arts, which has had the courthouse as a project for the last year and a half, not to mention Upper Arts, which hasn't had the courthouse as a project for the last year and a half. When the alderman decided to have the building be used by city staff, the arts people, I'm one of them, moved on. This is not, and there's this false relationship that's being set up by people who should know better, quite frankly. And it's perpetuated. It has ended as of December. The arts groups don't have any interest in the courthouse. I personally think that the police department needs a new building. They're gonna outgrow this building, the courthouse building, in the configuring that's going on now in very short order. If they've even outgrow it after it's already outgrown it by the time they actually occupy it. It's going to leave the building cut up into tiny little spaces. It'll be no good for anybody else after that. City, maybe city staff, but it's a wonderful building. It's a beautiful building, and it should be shared by all Southport residents, not just one department who's had been living in a temporary space for a couple of decades at this point. They need a permanent home, and they need something that's in keeping with the service that they provide to the community on par with the fire department. It's time we upgraded the police to something they deserve, not stuck them into a building that's too small. Thank you.
Anyone else? And by the way, and for the record, we support our police chief too and want the overall best outcome for him and the department and the city as a whole. Is there a motion to end public comment?
So moved.
Thank you, Will. Second?
Second.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Yeah, there is motion on the floor. Any final discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We have scheduled one additional special meeting on April 1st at 10 a.m. in this same building. Our time in this space that day is limited. And since we've received public comment today, all acknowledged and appreciated, April 1st will be a work session for board discussion. No public will be accepted. And it will be noticed that way. Work session requires the freedom to have open discussion and should not be considered or misconstrued as a final decision regarding this board's recommendation to the alderman. Let's begin by stating that UDO Article 2.3.A.12 and City Ordinance Section 13-34 state the planning board shall review and report as recommendations to the Board of Aldermen upon the extent, location, and design of all public structures and facilities, on the acquisition and disposal of public properties, and on the establishment of building lines, unquote. So we are tasked as a body, and one of our goals, our responsibilities, is to advise about the design and use of city property as a part of overall planning for the city's best interest. The alderman assigned the courthouse review task on March 3rd, and by the UDO article previously stated and the city ordinance, we have 30 days to complete that. The deadline is close of business on April 3rd. Manager Saldo, did you have any additional information to provide or a statement for us today? Anything?
I know you're all good.
Thank you, sir. And then do we have other city presenters, the city engineer or the chief? Anything, any comments? Excellent. We all did get, and thank you for our old eyes, the enlarged diagram showing the measurements of the rooms inside as proposed. We appreciate Tom. Thank you for doing that for us. Are these to be taken as the net usable square footage?
As I said, and I think Chief Barnes also said, the actual drawings that Mosley did were block diagrams. They were not architectural dimension drawings. So what you have there are basically, it was an unscaled drawing. So I kind of took that, this wing, the outside length is 45 feet. And on a 20 scale, it was 110. This room on a 20 scale is 30 and ratioed it out. So those are estimated areas. They are not architectural, they're not hard numbers, they are rough estimated numbers.
Okay, thank you. And then could you just estimate, Tom, there was nothing on here for the hallways and the lobby measurement. Do you have those by chance?
The lobby is approximately 14 by 16. And the hallway, I don't have that here. It was 11 by about 50.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions of Tom while we've got him bouncing up and down with the figure thing going on?
Getting steps.
That's right. Anyone else for Tom? All right. And Chief, we're glad that you're with us today. We're happy to accommodate your schedule. If you had a couple good days away from your duties, I think you were supposed to schedule to be gone. Does anyone have any questions for the chief while we've got him here? Or for staff, and if you're talking about a specific document, we talked about that before, please reference it for the record. If there are page numbers, please refer to those page numbers so we can all follow along.
Madam Chair, I just have one question.
Yes, sir.
No, it was kind enough to send out the property condition assessment report from about 2 years ago, a year and a half. And there's a number of items on there, and I understand that we're only talking about the police department, of the old courthouse today. But there's about 6.6 million worth of work that needs to be done. And I'm just curious if that's already in work. So it's been sitting for a year and a half with all these reports. So when I'm thinking about what building best fits, you know, you have to look at also how much work does it need. So I'm just curious, and no, perhaps you know the answer to that, but I'm just.
Yeah, I'll turn to Tom. I know there's been a lot of ongoing work with some of those buildings as well, especially like the city gym that road's been replaced.
Yeah.
So there are ongoing projects that have been completed. Do you know the percentage?
I don't have the percentage off the top of my head. Had I known the question, I would have been prepared for it. In the report that was done, they listed 3 categories of repairs: immediate repairs, short-term, and long-term. The immediate repairs were all put in the budget last year and are in the process, if not already completed. The intermediate repairs will be submitted in ongoing years as part of that.
All right, thank you. Is there a priority? Because the one that caught my eye most, and again, if you could bear with me, Madam Chair, is the Parks building. It just, what a mess. It just needs a lot of.
On the Parks building, the doors are being replaced. It just got a new roof this year. And the windows are also being replaced on it. Those are considered the immediate needs on it.
Okay, super. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. Right. Who else?
I have a few questions.
Here you read.
Chief Goring, may I? I have a few questions for you, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Oh, first of all, I know my position, I think the overall position of this board is you do need space.
Yes, sir.
You need to have your own building that promotes the police department men and women. And personally, I want to thank you for what you've done, especially when you took over the police department back in 2018. I think you were given 2 officers from the old force,
Yes, sir.
and you basically rebuilt that.
Yes, sir.
So I want to commend you for that.
Thank you.
And so, you know, any question I ask today, it's more kind of need to know.
Mhm.
No way is meant to be interpreted as critical in any way, because you've done a lot of work, a lot of research, and I just have some, I guess, some objective questions, I think, some concerns. As I understand it, from the last time you spoke, you said that, and I think Mosley said, well, it's not ideal, but it's generally recommended as far as the scope of the plan for the courthouse now. You said you were sacrificing a lot, but you could make it work. And when I look at what you've done in the police department, I think, why should you sacrifice now? Now, the courthouse, I think everyone agrees it should be a government building, will be a government building. The issue there is, and I think we can follow up with Representative Miller, is the 5 million, is that for a government building, or does it have to be specifically designated for a police department? That's important, because when I look at the square footage, and this is based on the reports that have been given from Mosley, it says that basically there would be 6,700 usable square footage in the building. You had your ideal plan, which was a new building, and we all agree 10, 12 million is not in the financial plans right now. So then, and I think that's what Larry looked at the buildings, that we asked for the report that was done as far as the cost of maintenance. Now, if you could get a city-owned building that had 10,000 square feet, and you would have the chance and the opportunity to make it as you wanted, for quote, not just sacrificing, but ideal, would you take that opportunity?
Well, as I mentioned, this is 5 years I've been trying to talk to the 4 boards and the various city managers that we've had about the need for space. And I took over in 2018, this was the police department we're standing in. They had put a couple temporary walls, and it did not meet the needs then. That was some of the critical failures that were brought out when I took over. I would take space. I mean, again, I've mentioned this, but the early plans that you had that y'all pulled out since looked at under Manager Therian, those were brought to the board, but they stalled out and they went nowhere. So the discussion kind of fell by the wayside or got shelved, if you will. I mean, I'm open to space. When I started really just stewing everything down and looking at it, talking with other police chiefs and around the region, looking at other police departments, that is where I looked at the brand new perfect scenario, state of the art, they're gonna build us a new building. And then I just looked at it and said, well, you know, we don't really need a Sally Port. A lot of people ask about that. What is a Sally Port used for? I looked at other PDs, that's something out of the storage rooms. They don't really use them for their intent. We have a situation where we need to carry somebody out, we go right and live here with a person. We don't really house them in a Sally Port anymore. There's different things in there. A large weight room that was brought to me, when they first, looked at the original design. I was questioning about that. Could you use local gyms that are in the area? And someone reached out to us. So yeah, so I said, I can take that space out to try to look at, the possibility of an available building that's already city owned. I've been before, city council several times. And of course, we all know that you want to try to save where you can save and try to do the best for the taxpayer dollars. So that's a city owned building. Again, just looking at previous knowledge and hearing from the citizens in Southport for many years, the police department going back in that building is no surprise. That was talked about. I mentioned that before when I was on the board. We had several town meetings and they wanted the police department to go back in that building. So knowing all that and looking at the hard numbers and the reality of what I got before me, looking at the square footage that Mosley whittled down to say that we could go in and be comfortable through 2044, that current building will meet our needs.
Okay. I understand that that's your position. I know that's been posted. But humbly, that wasn't my question. My question.
Well, your question is if I could get a brand new building, yeah, I can go to a brand
I'm
new.
not agreeing
Is that what
with you.
you're asking? I mean, yeah.
I'm
So,
not being argumentative, you know.
I'm not argumentative either, but I mean.
But I'm asking, if you could have 10,000 square feet, just that simple hypothetical.
Yeah.
Would you be satisfied with that?
Yes, I mean, anybody would, sir, yes. If the Board of Aldermen said, we're in here and said, we're gonna build you a brand new building, certainly how about that. Anybody would.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. And the reason I ask, it's not a trick question or anything, because, no, sorry, I'd never do that. There's always sayings, I practiced in Virginia many years. I represented youth departments, and I did a lot of the shooting cases. And I was always told, there's not a pancake too thin that doesn't have two sides.
Yes.
And on this, the old courthouse is a gym. It's a historically designated building.
Mhm.
And when you look at the totality of the government, respectfully, I think that building would be better for government administrative offices if the 5 million is not contingent on what type of government building, because then you can move all the administrative from the city hall building, put it in there, and it would be a gym. Where the public can go in, there's no restrictions, it's not, doesn't have the security concerns that a police department has. And I think that's where the home of our mayor should be, something like that. But what you deserve is the respect to have the square footage and space that you need
Right.
to provide for the men. And I think if you look at our city hall, and I don't know how well constructed that is, I think that'd be part of the study, is there's 10,000 square feet there. You have 26 parking spots. Why could it not be designed? And then we talk about time frame. People say, wait a minute, and there's been all this talk about kicking the can down the road. Well, I think I'm for that because we have nothing to do with that. The mayor, the board of aldermen have nothing to do with that. That's prior mayors, board of aldermen, size of the police department, so many factors. But what we have now is making a long-term decision for the benefit of the whole government, not just one section. But what I'm saying is putting you in a historic building has a nice ambiance to it, a nice ring. But I think you deserve more space that you'll never have to move again. And you can work from scratch now. Timing. So far, by running a building for 5 years, the city is spending over 330 or 340,000 for it at least to have it there.
Mhm.
That should be money that they're putting into renovations for a police department. And so you're already in the lease for another 4 years.
Yes.
We don't know when the money's going to come from the state, the 5 million. So if we can go to Mosley and say, hey, in 60 days, can you give us a report on City Hall? Is it feasible to do renovations to make that a police department for what Chief Quarry and his officers need? If he comes back and says it does, where's the downside? Because you're not losing time. If he says no, then it's answered. And I'm just saying, I think we need to look at another alternative. And it's not meant to be disrespectful of any work that's been done, but it's kind of, when you're not in the forest, when you're outside, it's sometimes easier to look. And I've always thought police officers deserve the best for the risks and what you do in this daily stress, because every time you do a stop, you never know what's going to happen. And that's why when you have your home deserves to be the best that can be given. You deserve men and women locker rooms. You deserve a training role. And I think that instead of giving you a Chevy, let's give you a Cadillac, is what I'm trying to say.
And I thank you for that. Again, I agree with what you're saying, that all that's above me, though, it's out of my hands, what direction they go. That, some of that has been explored since we met with Moses. They did do an assessment on the city hall as well as the police department. So that some of that has already been talked about. And certainly when we bought the 1029 building, a majority of that building was supposed to be for the police department. Again, as you mentioned, that's not the fault of anyone now. We've had a lot of change over in boards and ideas. So we're still riding the wave, just trying to settle somewhere. So,
I just
but I
want you
mean,
to know, I'm behind.
and I appreciate it. And yeah, and I get that. So, but you know, I looked at the square footage, the needs that we have, the different things that we can do with the building. They can settle to this and be comfortable. I wouldn't just try to squeeze us in somewhere and then 10 years down the road be wanting to kick myself in the head for doing that. I've looked at all this, but I mean, again, it's just, we'll see where it takes us. So,
And
I just want to interject one thing about administration going into Old City Hall. In the Mosley Space Needs Study, they did look at City Hall office because that was part of their study. And what they're saying for the current needs of City Hall is almost 7,800 square feet. In 2028, that goes up to 8,400 square feet. Taking it out to 2044, it goes to 8,900 square feet. If you take out the 1,800 square feet of courtroom, that only leaves 6,700 square feet in Old City Hall. So not every department could move into there. It would have to be split up.
And that's my point, and you're helping with that.
I just wanted,
Oh, no, I'd analyze that, I have an answer for you, but I'll tell you what, that helps the argument with what I have with the police department. Because those same numbers by Mosley say that by the time the police department moves in, there'll be less space than they really need, and in 10 years, there'll be about 1,400 square foot less. okay? So, and then the chief had briefly talked about having a substation. And he cited the Apex, Cary, and Raleigh. Well, those are apples and oranges. Apex is 120 officers, Cary is 210, Raleigh is 700. Their land mass, we're 4 square miles. They're 60, 70, 150 square miles. It's different. So what's going to happen is the same point you're making now applies to the police department, because if they truly grow like they're supposed to in 10 years, as was conceded by the chief in the last meeting, then they're going to need additional space. And the difference is a police department should be one building, not in a substation. The government, you can take one segment, whether it's planning, permitting, and put them in a building like this. Because if you have this square footage and that square footage, you probably have enough.
And let me just correct something that you're saying, because in the Mosley study for the police needs, it's 8,600 square feet in 2044. That includes an 800 square foot sally port.
Well, I'm looking at the
So-
road about the
So if you take out the sally port, which the chief has said is not required, and most departments don't even have them around because it's generally for a prisoner exchange. You take that 800 square foot out and you're at 7,800 square feet of needs in 2044. Also included in the Mosley report are training rooms and things like that, which would double as the courtroom upstairs. So
But that's the point.
there is,
They would double. You would have your own isolated training room. You could have virtual, electronic equipment specifically for police departments. Because if you do the research and look at what modern police departments are doing as far as training officers and what they provide virtually as training within the facility, it's different. And
that's where I would defer to.
Look
The
at that,
chief
we're doing that
understands.
now. Yeah, we already have all that technology, we're doing that now. That's why. I looked at the numbers, everybody has different numbers, so we're doing that now. And somebody, one of y'all asked me on the phone, page you about, have I reached out to other police chiefs, the Chiefs Association of North Carolina, the International, and that is what they're recommending. It doesn't matter how big your department is, the square footage of how you serve and the best you can serve is some of the reasons for substations. You don't have to be the number of personnel or how big your district is versus, us versus the city of Wilmington. It's just providing service, and we look at response times and data to dictate all that. So.
understood. Thank you, sir.
Anyone else have anything for the chief while he's standing?
But thank you, Chief.
You got it. I appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Does anyone else have any general comments or requests from staff, questions for staff while we're together today?
I have general comments. Chair, at the last meeting we had, the chief spent quite a bit of time with me, right? Pretty in-depth questions about to the current police station. I can see how it's just jammed in there. They certainly need space. Part of the problem is when you start sharing a building with another entity, it just brings a whole host of issues. As I mentioned at the last meeting, I understand what Mr. Lockman's saying, but I think that lack of space can be solved by not having the aldermen use the chambers. Having those chambers in there restricts the entire design and use of the building, so that you wind up eliminating things such as locker rooms, such as shower rooms, break rooms, and on and on and on. Not to mention the fact that having a second floor auditorium for access from an ADA perspective, or even just general access, is just fraught with issues. Besides the whole idea of trying to share it as a training room, it just doesn't work, because when you look at the design, if they use it as a training room, there is really no place to store the items that they use for training. And it certainly restricts the whole design of the police department. So I think my feeling, and I'm not making a motion because I'd like to hear more. But I think I'm sure it could work for the police department if you excluded the alderman's meeting room. Then it just opens the whole design process up. I think it could be done. So I just think that, you look at the elevator, you look at everything else that's needed, and just the design, I'm not sure how you can work around that bathrooms behind the chambers, trying to get people out if they needed to in an emergency, trying to get people up the stairs, and just walking up alone. Unless you're gonna put in a supersized elevator, for skyscraper or whatever, it's just not gonna work like that. You can still put in a small elevator to give people access, but you don't need, and you can save some money there. But that's my thoughts, just to get the discussion going.
I have a couple comments. So I agree with 100% what Kevin just said. The police department needs to have an appropriate building, state of the art. To me, the courthouse is a forced fit. It's all compromises left and right. If a building like the city hall were to be repurposed, there's already adequate parking there. There's a lot of good things about that building. I don't know if the evidence law still exists or not, but if it does, that's another positive thing. I think, like Kevin said, the courthouse is a city treasure. The public needs to be able to access it. If it were to become the police department, that's not exist anymore as we know it. As a builder, as I mentioned last time, quite often doing a historic renovation can go way over budget. There's going to be hidden things. It could be structural, it could be termite, it could be rot. Moving walls, opening things up and make it an obsolete floor plan work. It's probably going to go past the $5 million number. So I think it would be best to look at other options besides this. Like Kevin was saying, it may be appropriate to relocate city admin to there, and the public would have access. The public could walk in and go to the mayor's office and talk to the mayor in the old building. Or any department that's there. And then the building department could be in a building like this that the city already owns, but I think the police department needs the appropriate building. It would be nice if it could be flip-flopped like with the current city hall. If that's not going to work, then looking at some other land that the city owns and take advantage of that. If there's something on it that's on the list to be all these repairs, maybe it needs to be knocked down and build on the building they need to go through 2044. Because I just don't see that being a big picture, wise decision for long term. It's just a forced fit. Could it work? Yes, it could. It's like making a 2-bedroom house into a 3-bedroom house. The 3rd bedroom is not really a proper bedroom and all that kind of thing. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anyone else? John?
Yes, so from listening to the alderman in early March and our previous meetings, some of the discussions today, we're looking at a layout. I'm not sure anybody really is pleased with it, right? I know at an alderman meeting, there were questions about flow from this office to this office. And, this is a block diagram. It's not a architectural rendering or drawing. The dimensions that Tom did a good job putting dimensions in here, but I remember the architect saying they didn't move walls and things. So I think we're putting our hat in the ring here where we don't have a lot of certainty as to what these offices will look like. And to me, the police department and the chamber, which is probably the best part of the building, aren't compatible in their use. And I would say we have kind of two flows of thoughts here, which would mean move the alderman out and give the police the entire building, or move City Hall in here and police to city hall, right? Does that kind of summarize what we're looking at? My concern is we just don't have enough good information or confidence in these layouts to say 20 years from now, or 10 years from now, or 5 years from now, the chief isn't gonna have to come back and ask for more space. So, I think the architect did what the city asked him to do, but it probably isn't everything we would need at this point to make a reasonable decision.
We're scheduled for a work session on the 1st.
Yes.
Okay. We have the capability of course, televising that. We need to, but we're not taking public comments. So we may, because there's so many questions, we may want to adjust where we have our meeting, just a suggestion, to the conference room at City Hall, so we can get a feel for that building. For those who are not familiar with the layout, is that possible?
It can't be filmed there.
Huh?
It cannot be filmed there.
It can't be from, okay, what we used to, but I guess we don't do it anymore.
It can't be filmed.
Yeah, well, we did a few years ago, but now we can't do it. Okay, so that just negates that then.
We can always have a field trip again. We did it
Well,
before.
we could do a field trip if we can meet there first, do our field trip and then come down here and have our meeting. So we can do that. And then report on what we see. And I can see a benefit to that building because it's proximity to the fire department and to Dozier Hospital. And in times of emergency, face storms or anything else, that would centralize a lot of those, all of our emergency services basically in walking distance. But like Larry said, it also, having the building be the entire thing is, you're gonna have problems if you bring the public in the front door. I think for meetings and other things as well, there, and still maintain the security of the department. So you're gonna either need to give them the whole building or nothing at all. Because I think it can cause some issues if it's not manned while that's going on. Of course, it would provide security for any of the meetings because it would have to leave the buildings that they would be in it. But also too, the time frame. I think we were way overdue giving the police department their own building. I mean, we are way overdue on this, and we need to find not only the quickest method, but the one who gives them actually gives them more space, if you will, than they need. Because we don't know what the future holds. We need to give them as much possible leeway as possible. So that's gonna be a decision we have to make, but I would suggest we take a field trip down there, take a look at it, see if it's feasible. If that's okay with the rest of the board.
It sounds reasonable to me. I appreciate you bringing that up, Will. I keep going back to when a lot of this conversation started, the desire for the alderman, this board, any of the city's boards and commissions to have a meeting space available where we weren't shuffling around to whatever might be available. And so that was part of the conversation, to use the upstairs of that building. The meeting space would be exclusive for the aldermen and city boards and commissions. And so now we've kind of knocked that in the head, saying it's not, and I'm not saying it's good or bad, I'm just saying it's gone against already. We're rubbing against what the original original premise for part of that building was. So we're taking steps back in thinking, along those lines. For me personally, I love history. I don't like the idea of moving walls around, taking walls down. We don't know if we can even do that in that courthouse. I like the idea. Kevin's made some good points, Counselor, about using it for admin staff instead. Easier to work the space that's there for those purposes, and looking at having the police department assume the current city hall. More room for them there. I believe in one of the earlier iterations of the Mosley recommendations along the line, they had even discussed taking over the porches if need be. So upstairs in the current city hall could be backed out to absorb that porch up there to give even more room. And I know every building has its issues. When we talk about, we don't know how much work, we'd want an assessment of how much work would have to be done in City Hall. When you look at, as we've been given access to, the information on all 18 of our city properties, we don't have one property, y'all, that's not in the middle of a house needing something done to it. So to brush that off, to say, it needs a lot of work. All of our buildings need a lot of work, and we've got to get to the point to where we are, and thank goodness things are being budgeted this year and looking forward already to what can be done each year on some of the properties. We own these buildings. We're all helping pay for these. So we need to get on a schedule to get the things taken care of that have been identified. As far as the need to let our legislator, let Representative Miller know that or to pinpoint that building being the police department. I've gone to Raleigh and I've talked with folks in and outside the legislative building. My understanding is to go after that money, we only need, say, it's going to be a city government building. Y'all, it already is a city government building. We own it. So we could, at this point, say, yes, that's what it's going to be. We're going to use it for city government purposes. And I appreciate Ms. Bray bringing that up about the arts group, the board. That poor horse was beat down. We need to stop slapping it around. That doesn't enter into anything anymore. This is a city government building. And my understanding is that money can be asked for, can be negotiated out with that statement. So I think that's, as we look at all of the others, maybe that's the simplest thing to begin with. We can look at that some more and see about how to do that. But my understanding from a couple different sources is that's all we need to say at this point. We don't need to pinpoint it down to the PD. And I am all for preserving that building, getting it renovated, and our city using its property to its best advantage. So, you have something else, Kevin?
Yeah, just summarily, I appreciate Tom. Thank you, Chief, for answering the questions. Looking at it from the outside, not being involved in the police department at times specifically, common sense, if you have a building that's going to give you 6,700 square feet forever versus having a building you could modified gives you 10,000 square feet without any nostalgia influences. I know in the past, I think the old courthouse had police department in it. I don't know how many officers they had back then, but by the same flip the coin, it had been, I think it had been the South City Hall from 1979 to 2014. So that card plays both sides. So why not, the same argument goes, well, why can't we move the city government back in there? Then you benefit the mayor's office, the finance, the plant, every other government agency benefits by being above historic building as designated and open to the public. I think personally, humbly, I think having a building with more square footage, that you have a wide canvas to not sacrifice, and you put away the nostalgia and the quote imagery of it's the old courthouse pragmatically. And I know, Chief, you've always said you want what's best for the police department, hands down. So as I always say, when you make a decision, what would you tell a friend in the same position? Because sometimes it's hard to be objective when we're involved. It just is. I'm the same way. So I just ask everyone to step back, look, and just look at, analyze, is it a feasible means to do it? Because once it's done, it's done. And then with any new money coming in from any new developments, that can be done for so many other things. We, the gym, the public utilities building, should we buy more land? How can that money be used to benefit Southport citizens? I know we're trying to do a 1% tax, that falls through. Well, then you know what? What's it going to take for our roads? There's so many other things. So I'm just, when I looked at it, I was trying to look at the big picture and say, could I be proud and come to you and say, hey, Chief, this is what I did. This is what this board did. This is what the Board of Aldermen did. We had you 10,000 square feet. Make it the best, because that's what you deserve.
Madam Chair, through the chair, would you mind if I ask the city manager a question? No, the city hall right now is 12,000 square feet. On a percentage basis, how much of that are you using right now?
We'll say about 90%. We have several offices that are vacant that could be used, but not very many.
Madam Chair, I just want to make sure that we're not, and I don't mean this in the way it's going to sound, but I just want to make sure we're not kicking this can in this different direction. So the thought of moving the police department down to the city hall, then it's like playing whack-a-mole, because now if you're thinking about moving city hall to the courthouse, you're way under capacity, because you've got 8,500 square feet and you need, let's say, 10,000 square feet. So if you understand what I'm saying, so I want to make sure that I'm willing to go down there, take a look at it, see how it can be done. You also know if the chief, has there ever been any design for a police station in the old city hall with all the different work that's been done? I'm sorry, the current city hall. Yeah, I'm sorry.
So we purchased that building. I say we, I was in a different world when I was on the board. So that building was bought for, the bottom floor was supposed to be primarily police department, code enforcement on the back end, and all administration was on the second floor. That was what we intended to do at the time, but the top of that building was still being leased. So by the time that top floor was vacant, they had not made a decision on what to do with it. So when I came in 2018, the building was still here. We had some damage in here, and of course, it was not usable space. We had all kind of issues, so we relocated to the second story or the second floor of that building. So I guess to answer that, the city originally bought that building. The design was for multiple use, because originally in the city hall, some of you guys mentioned, the police and everybody used that building. When you came in the back, you saw where the police was, and some of y'all walked through. That was where the police were. And then finance and everybody else was on the other side. And then down at the front to Moore Street is where the city manager was. The upstairs was only pretty much just used for board meetings, and they didn't have any other offices up there usable. They were just using that for storage. But of course, everything's grown now. There's many more employees in the city. So they kind of did look at all of that. When they did the survey and the assessment, they did assess it. Chairwoman Hodges was saying to bring out that bottom floor that we're out there now, that we're going to build that out to increase space on the bottom and leave the porches up top. So there is a little bit of these designs that are out there. So Again, that started under management area when we did the original assessment, so.
Great, thank you, appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Where, if I may, that was the point with that, and you have 7 square footage for city administrative building. So then ask yourself, which is harder to duplicate down the road? Formulating office space or finding a substation for police department, splitting up the police department, which I think is contrary to all basic rules. So then you say, okay, we're not gonna have that, but we have other buildings. We have this building, we have 1,600 square feet. You have other buildings with 2,200 square feet. That wouldn't take a lot of money to make it into office space. It's doable and doesn't break up the unity of the police department. And I think that was the method of the madness.
So you're thinking perhaps not fitting everybody into that building, but also spreading them to. other
Have
buildings?
one satellite office, figure out which division would be the most amenable to having in their separate space.
With the thought that it's easier to split staff and put them other places than to dismantle the police department. Give them their permanent home that I think we all agree they need their home. So, just some other thoughts that have been worked around, and we'll talk about that some more. Anyone else with any comments? This has been really good. I appreciate all the comments. We appreciate the staff that have commented for us today, giving us other things to think about. We'll work on the field trip idea and see what we can get done for current city hall. Are there additional comments? If you have any questions at post meeting, please send those to City Manager Saldo and copy me so we can be sure that we get all that addressed for our April 1st meeting, members, if you will. Is there anything additional or any announcements from anyone? Hearing none, can I get a motion to adjourn, please?
Something.
Thank you, Will. And a second?
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that, too. Motion is on the floor. Any final discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Unanimous motion 11:02. Thank you so much.